Hello and aloha. My name is Susan Campbell, and you are viewing me here in Maui at my home, which is absolutely beautiful. You might be able to even hear the surf and the wind. And I'm here to share with you Essential Cuisine. It's a multimedia project which shares many different culinary methods for you to put into your life. We have a subtitle of Essential Cuisine, and it's The Journey from Seed to Soul. And just a little bit of history about myself, and you'll understand why I named it that. I'm the co-author of the Healthy School Lunch Action Guide and a new book called Raising a New America. The Healthy School Lunch Action Guide was published in the mid-1990s, and during that time I was a raw food chef. You know, I really wasn't a practicing raw food chef. I didn't go around and teach it, but I knew it well. And I actually did create some education for some major hotel chains and work with some private schools where I put on big events, and I actually made all the food and the sprouting and the blending. But what I found out about raw food when I experienced it, and like I said, this was the mid-1990s when it was very odd, that it was one of the most beautiful dietary regimes I had ever been on in my life. I literally thought I'd died and gone to heaven. It was so delicious, so rich, so vibrant in color. And I just could eat all the things that I used to think were forbidden, like avocados and nuts and seeds and all of those things that really give us nourishment. So during these periods in the mid-1990s, I had that experience. And then I began to learn a whole lot more about fats and oils. And over those years, I started to see how things were really progressing worse, and that people just didn't understand the essence of the changes that we really need to make in our diets. There's just way too much fast food, as many of you know, and way too much junk food. But what do we do about that? Where do we start? Where do we make changes? Well, I came up with 4 different things which I thought were the most important. Number 1, get the sugars and refined foods out of your life. Sugary colas and all those things, they are just ruining our bodies on so many different levels. If you would just do that and put whole sugars and high fiber fresh fruits into your life instead. Number 2, get bad fats out. That would mean hydrogenated fats and many of the highly processed fats. Those things don't do anything but make us fat and make us probably very grouchy too, and don't do one thing for our bodies. We are starving for good fats, and you can eat them abundantly. You will never, ever overeat them because your body just won't let you. Number 3, get rid of preservatives and chemicals and hormones and antibiotics and all the things that are put into the food that our bodies are not meant to digest. Now, certainly on occasions we can, but if you would just focus on those 3 things, you would notice a radical difference in your diet. You notice a radical difference in the way you feel, your energy level, the way you look, and you would be so much far more healthier and be able to maybe defend off any kind of diseases that might be coming your way. And also, you would have, and you would be giving your family, if you have that opportunity, a mental, physical, and emotional balance. Because our bodies are not separate from our emotions, and our emotions are not separate from our thoughts. And this is one system, just like the earth. And this system needs to be kind of ticking and running all together. And so if you feed it and nourish it, it's going to perform a lot better for you, and you're going to have a much healthier and happier life. So 2 of our DVDs are an introduction into raw food cuisine. And the reason I'm introducing this to you, because I know it can be a rather challenging cuisine when you're not used to it. But really, it's quite simple, because it is one of the coolest ways to get natural sugars into your life, and a lot of nuts and seeds and good fats. Another area that we're going to go into is my ala oils, which is all about fats and oils. Those delicious, delicious flaxseed oils, pumpkin seed oils, coconut oils, and all of the things, all of the oils and fats that your body is absolutely craving. An Essential Cuisine, this journey from seed to soul, is really about the seed. You know, the seeds are the fresh foods that we get from the earth. The nuts and the seeds and the plants and the greens and the fruits and all of those things. Just like we are a seed that are growing, and our children are a seed that are growing, and we must nourish them. And this seed to soul is really all about our soul. And you know, we need to be happy and be able to cope with the many challenges that life gives us and the many gifts because it is a gift to live in this body and to experience life. And that's what essential cuisine is all about, the essence of the cuisine, the essence and the essential foods that you need to put in your life. And I think you'll have a lot of fun with essential cuisine because it's going to give you a variety of methods and techniques that you have probably never seen. And I'm not saying you should do one way or another. I'm saying let's just grab the best of the many methods and put them in your life and enjoy your food and enjoy the process. Aloha. This is the bulk section. Look at all of these foods. So here's what you do, Landon. You take one of these, like so affordably. We should do that when we get home. Yeah, we're gonna get some of these.
Whoa.
Okay.
Nice.
Gorgeous.
Huge.
Yeah, have you ever seen those before?
What else want to get?
Have you had one of these yet?
What are those?
A passion fruit?
Oh, passion fruit?
We have to get some. Aloha, and welcome to Essential Cuisine, a journey from seed to soul. In this first segment, we are going to cover raw food basics. Now, for many people, raw food is really called living foods because what happens is many of the foods that are fresh from the earth, the bounty of nuts and seeds and legumes and fruits and vegetables, they're brought to life through soaking and sprouting and blending. And so many people call raw food living foods. And what was really unique for me is that I learned raw food cuisine, and I learned how to prepare it, eat it, and incorporate it into my life in 1991. And since then, here we are in 2006, we have many companies that are making raw food already ready for us, and we don't have to be making them all the time. But what's fun is to learn how to make them because it's really great for the whole family to participate in. Kids love to make them because they love to see things grow and sprout. And besides that, it is the most amazing tasting food I ever enjoyed. And I enjoy many kinds of foods, but I'll tell you, raw food, I don't think anything has ever awakened my senses like raw food has. First of all, the smells that come out, as you'll see as we go along, you won't be able to smell them, but when you start making these foods at home, you will get an idea of the fresh, vibrant aromas that come through the blending and the sprouting and the juicing. And then the sight of them. I mean, look at the colors of all of these foods. And just in where the camera has shown you, we just have a variety of many foods. And the colors are so beautiful. And in many of the dishes, you'll mix many of these together. And what we're going to cover in the very beginning is very, very simple food so that you can just get an idea of how to proceed in your own kitchen. Secondly, the taste is absolutely astounding because for the first time you'll taste foods in a completely different form, which just gives a new variety to some of the things we get bored with in our lives now. One of the things that's very important about raw food is your equipment and getting your kitchen ready. Most of our kitchens have microwaves and they have toaster ovens and they have toasters and they have blenders and all of this kind of equipment that is used for everyday eating. But in raw food, it's important to have the right equipment and to kind of have your kitchen set up for it, and it'll be a lot easier for you. So we're going to cover each one of those basic segments, but first I just want to give you an overview of the different equipment. First of all, a Vitamix, if you can get a Vitamix or a really great blender, that is absolutely essential. This particular machine does more than just make smoothies and blend. This can ground nuts and seeds, it can make nut butters. It's an incredible machine and it's very strong and works very fast. A food processor is a must for raw food cuisine for some of the same reasons. There's a lot of blending that you'll see that we're going to do while we're practicing together. A juicer, this particular juicer is a Champion juicer. We're going to use it because it does so many different varieties of performances in the raw food cuisine. You can actually make juice out of it. You can make sorbets and nut butters. A grater, that's another must. We'll be showing you how to use a grater. These are things that your kids can use as well. A coffee grinder. We use a coffee grinder quite a bit for our nuts and seeds. And also knives. Knives are extremely important. I'm using a kin onion shun. Kin onion shun? I'm using a kin onion shun. This is a super steel knife. And what's really cool about it is, I think this is the knife that Alton Brown uses, and he's my favorite chef on the Food Channel. But this is clad with 16 layers of high carbon stainless steel. And it's got a D-shaped handle that keeps it from twisting. You will love this knife, and we'll have a lot of fun with it as we proceed on to the segments. And then we're using these, these are called the Kamachi knives, and they're a fluorinated resin coating over stainless steel. These knives are so light. We have used these in our kids' camp when we teach, when I taught at Laguna Culinary Arts, and we would have the kids come in and they would have a different color knife for each of them. Now the knives weren't really designed for children and for one, you know, for the boys to pick the blue and the girls to pick the pink, but that's what we did at the culinary school, and it was a big hit. These knives are nice and light and they're great for kids to use, but I'm saying kids that have been trained on knives because they are quite sharp. They're very light. They are colored because they're used for different things and designed. This particular knife is designed for, the pink knife is the knife that's for meat, and the green knife is for vegetables. The blue knife is for fish, and then the nice long yellow knife is for bread. And we'll talk more about these as we move on into the segment. But I love these knives, and that's why we're using them, and this one is like one of the only knives you need in your life. Also, what we'll want to use is a dehydrator. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can use your oven on a very, very low temperature, or you can also use the sunshine if you have a hanging kind of device, and if you happen to live a place like we do in Hawaii where it's very warm. But we have a Excalibur food dehydrator here. It's got 9 trays. When we do our dehydration section, you'll learn more about it. Wonderful dehydrator with a timer on it. I want to highlight just a few more foods, because as people that have been eating raw food, we have found out too that even people that are into dairy can now have food that is raw. This is from Organic Pastures in California, and now we're making raw unpasteurized milk, cream, cheese, and even butter. And this raw dairy is wonderful when it's cultured. And speaking of cultured foods, we also have sauerkrauts that are cultured, and these foods are raw, and they're cultured while they're raw. They're not pasteurized. And what that means is we pasteurized our food for many years because we felt a need to, because of the way some of our food was being made. And it's not just that anybody was careless, but we needed to really keep our food clean and not have germs. So the reason that I'm using some of these products here is that these people and these manufacturers are going to the utmost care to provide food for you that has not been pasteurized, which is often much easier. This food has been so carefully handled and processed and cultured so that it is high in friendly flora that is so healthy for your body. And that's one of the reasons that all of raw foods are so popular, is because they're so high in enzymes. Enzymes are what help us digest our food, and when we eat a lot of cooked food, it's very difficult to digest our food sometimes. Now, different traditions and different cultures all have different modalities. In the East, in Indian food, all of the food is cooked, and some of your Ayurvedic doctors will all want you to eat cooked food. So there's many different opinions out there, and there's many different cuisines. And what we're doing here is we're not really advocating that this is the one and only way you should eat it all. What we're wanting to do is just introduce to you a new modality and new techniques and new methods of food so that you can start to cultivate them and fuse them into your own culinary adventure now. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is learn all about sprouting. Okay, welcome to our first segment, which is all about seeds. We're going to start out with seeds. In our next segment, we're going to talk about soaking nuts and some other things, but right now we're just going to stick with some seeds. There are so many varieties I can't even tell you that you can use, but basically what I want to give you is an idea of what seeds look like and how they transform themselves through the soaking and sprouting process. We're going to start out here with chickpeas or garbanzo beans, which many of you know. As you can see, these beans right here are hard as a rock. We could just throw them through something and they would hit the wall and just make a big noise. But right here, these are the same beans that have been soaked. I'm sure you've seen cans of garbanzo beans or chickpeas. They're made often to put into hummus, sprinkled on top of salads, ground up and put in soups. But this is just the second stage. It takes them about at least overnight. I would say probably 12 hours, but I talk about everything overnight. Some things soak a lot faster, but overnight is a good rule of thumb. Here we have mung beans, the same thing. As you'll see, these seeds, they're very tiny and they're very, very hard. And then when they're soaked, you can see them here. These have been sitting in water overnight. And actually, these have been sitting here since this morning. They've been in about 10 hours. Now, let me tell you something about these. You know how squirrels, they take their nuts and seeds and they bury them into the earth? Well, that's because the earth germinates them. The moisture brings the seed alive. Every seed has to be germinated in order to be edible because you could never eat these the way that they are now. So that's the whole reason for soaking them. Once you soak them, then you start to water them and allow them to grow. And that's why they call it live food, because it really comes to life, as you'll see as we move along here. Here are some lentils. These lentils are green lentils, and they're whole so that they can be sprouted. And here they are soaked. And you can see that the water's kind of dirty. And the reason that the water has this dirty film over it, this doesn't have a whole lot of water, but you can see here in the color. And when we rinse the sprouts, you'll see even more. What these seeds have on them and why you could store them in your room for days and days and days, and they would not oxidize and they would not get moldy. Like if we were to set out a strawberry out here, the strawberry would get moldy very soon and gnats would start to fly around it, but not seeds, because they have what they call enzyme inhibitors on the seeds. And those inhibit any enzyme action. And that's why they can last forever. And that's why they're such a marvelous food, because you can store them in your cellar, you can store them in your cupboards in a tight jar, and they'll last for a very long time. So these enzyme inhibitors that are on the seeds naturally, the way the earth has grown them, when we soak them, the enzyme inhibitors come off, and that's what you get in the discoloration. And we're going to rinse those away, and that allows the seed to start to grow. And if we were to plant it in the earth or into some great soil, then we might have a really great plant, which is how all of our food is grown, as you know. So let me take you to the third step. We have the seed, then we soak them for their certain amount of time to get all the enzyme inhibitors off, and then we're going to sprout them. And to sprout them, we actually we rinse them all off and we put them in a jar and we let them start to grow. What we have to do is we have to rinse them every day, 2 to 3 times a day, depending on where you live. Like we're here in the hot tropics, and I found that it's good to rinse these 3 times a day. Twice a day is okay. I just love to splash them with some water. If you're in a very dry area like the desert, small seeds like these wheat berries, these are soft white wheat berries. These have been soaked and sprouted for a couple of days. They're already feeling pretty dry. So they need to have water often. Now you can see the little tail that's growing on these. These have already been growing for a couple of days. And that's where you want to grow your sprouts. You want to grow them so that they have a tail on them about half as long or as long as the original seed. Now here, the chickpeas, they barely have a little seed on them. They're just starting to grow, where they're starting to sprout. Now these mung beans, you can see these have grown a lot. And this is actually a little bit too much, but look at the transformation these seeds have gone through from this to this to this. And what happens too in some of the seeds, you'll see these green husks, they actually will come off. And then you have this white seed with this long tail on it. These can be used to be ground up in the food processor with herbs and spices and maybe some tasty olive oil and lemon, and you can actually make a pâté. You can sprinkle them on salads and wraps, as you'll see what we're going to do later in some of the segments. These are the lentils, and look at the transformation they've gone through. I'm going to take my hands in here and just show you.
And you can see that the outer shell is starting to fall off of them also. Now the wheat berries are a very hard seed, much like the mung beans, and they have been soaked and then sprouted. And once they sprouted for a couple of days, we set them in this jar, we add the water and cover them and let them sit in a dark cupboard for 2 to 3 days, and it makes a liquid called Rejuvelac. And this Rejuvelac is full of enzymes, and it is a cultured food. And you can see actually it growing here in the light. Can you see that? Isn't that beautiful? This is a growing, living food. And this is a beverage used to mix some of our seed cheeses, let's see, some of our smoothies. You can mix sauces with this highly enzymatic live beverage that is so good for your digestion. And you can just cover it with some cheesecloth. I wanted to show you this. There are sprouting jars like this one that you can buy at many of your health food stores, or you can order them online. They have a screen in the top so that you can easily put the sprouts in them once we've cleaned them, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in a second. And then you can just rinse them and turn them upside down and let them drain. Then, when they're all sprouted, and let's say like these, okay, we just don't want to eat these today. What the heck are we going to do with them? What we're going to do, and this is how you store them, is you put them in a clean glass jar. And if you have to use a plastic bag or a plastic container, that's okay. Glass is best, though. And you can see this has not a top with any kind of screen on it. You cover it with water, and this is how you store them in the fridge. I like to rinse them, though, once a day with fresh water. So it's best if you can, keep your sprouts going and keep them fresh, but you really can store them for, several days if you rinse them every day, and then you've got fresh sprouts. Another thing we can soak, and these are raisins, and you'll see how we're going to use raisins and dates. Any dried fruit is great soaked. The juice is like full of natural sugars. You can blend these into many of our desserts, as you'll see, and that's what gives them their sweetness, along with honey and other flavorings. But you can see that this raisin was much, much smaller when we started, and how they puff up with water. And that makes them really easily able to blend with other foods like nuts and seeds to make some desserts and some tasty sweet dishes. So I'm going to take these over to the sink, and I'm going to show you how we rinse them. I'm going to take the chickpeas and the mung beans. Whoops. All right, we got to be careful when you're in the kitchen, when you're barefoot especially. So I'm going to turn on the water. You need a colander, one that has, let me come over here closer to the camera, and I'll show you a couple of different sizes. You can see this one right here. This is one of my favorites because it has 2 handles. And this one is much larger, so you don't want to put your mung beans in this. But you can easily put almonds and other bigger nuts, and the chickpeas, of course. And then this is a good one with a really good handle and a very fine mesh screen. Incidentally, if you can't get a jar, you can easily get your old jars that you have hanging around the house. You cover them with a screen or a cheesecloth and put a rubber band on the top, and that works just fine too. So we basically just take this seed that's been sprouting all of this time, you pour it into the strainer, and you give it a really good rinse. Oh, by the way, as soon as I rinse these, I'll tell you more. When you store them and when you soak them, you want to do it in filtered water. Spring water, the best water you can find. If you have filtered water at your tap, it's much better to, to rinse them with that too. But otherwise, tap water is fine because it's just rinsing them off, and it's only done for a brief moment. Now, another thing you can do if you don't have a sprouting jar and you're just wanting to sprout some really quickly is I'm going to get a bowl over here. And you can easily take the strainer. We've just rinsed the seeds, and you simply set it on top of the bowl, and they can start to grow. Or you can set it on a plate, something that just can catch the water that's going to drain out of it. Basically what you want to do is you want to keep some air under it. So if you have more of a shallow bowl or something, I do that all the time. And maybe I'll throw a towel over the top or a paper towel just to keep any bugs from coming in it. But what we're going to do is we're going to take these seeds, and we're going to go ahead and just take them into this jar. And once we put them in the jar, then we just put the lid on, and they can begin to sprout. Whoopsie, we lost a couple. I have a friend that said her grandmother would never ever lose a seed. She was so good at sprouting. So then you put the lid on, and if you're using a screen lid and a rubber band, that works too, but these are so easy. I love using these. And you put it somewhere that it can drain, and that's all there is to it. Now these seeds have already been draining, and they've already been grown, as you can see. I don't know if you can see, but the tails are really long on those. But I'm going to show you. So let's say you started soaking these in the morning, and you've come at night, and you're getting ready to go to bed. You're simply going to fill this up and give it a really good rinse. Turn the water off and let it rinse like this, and just let it drain out. Now you can stand here and hold it, but if you have your kitchen set up for it, all you have to do is put it into the rack. These racks work great, but as you can see, this is dripping onto the sink, so it's nice to put a plate down so that it can catch the water. And another nice thing to do, if you were to read some sprouting books, you would read both of these things I'm about to tell you, is to cover them. Some of the books say they need to be sprouted in the dark. Others don't say anything. I've done both. It seems to work well in both ways. So I think that's all for this particular segment. Remember, when you soak the sprouts, that you cover them with water. You put a tight lid on them, and you put them in the refrigerator, and then you have to take them out once a day and change the water, and remember to use filtered spring water. Okay? Now we're going to work with some nuts, almonds, pecans, walnuts. And I want to tell you a few more things though. Remember we talked about the Rejuvelac that I made? I wanted to tell you how to store this. It's very, very interesting. Once this beverage has fermented, like we talked about before, and it's really bubbled a lot for a couple of days, and you taste it and it tastes really rich and you think it's ready, what you do is you just strain the beverage off of the seeds, and you store it in an airtight container in your refrigerator, just like you would any other beverage. Then you can cover the seeds and start the process all over again. And you can do that for a couple of times. Isn't that great? That's a lot of mileage you get out of a handful of seeds to have such a great beverage. So I wanted to let you know that. I also wanted to take a moment here to point out some products, because as you'll notice as we do this segment, I'm going to bring a lot of different products in. And it's because I think they're the best. There are companies that manufacture with a level of integrity that is in alignment with these great living foods. And another aspect of that is that they're all organic. You always want to buy organic as much as possible. It's in alignment with the earth's rhythms. It is grown in soil that is abundant with the minerals and all of the things that make our foods nutritious for us. And it's one of the most powerful statements you can make as far as really supporting our farmers, is buying and eating organic food. So it goes without saying that all through our segment we always use organic food, and I'm going to point out products along the way, because many a times when I used to watch cooking shows or I would learn all about foods, I would go to the store and I wouldn't know what to choose. We're not sponsored by these companies. They don't pay for this particular series. We are featuring these because we chose them because we think they're the best, and they have a high quality and an amazing, excellent taste, and that's what it's all about. It's all about excellence. So when we're working with nuts and seeds, I wanted to show you some of the companies that make raw nuts, nut butters. And you know, it started out where we just got maybe raw tahini out of sesame seeds. And I'm going to show you some sesame seeds in another segment. We're actually going to do some grinding of them. And I'll show you some of the differences. But like raw tahini, you can see it many times roasted. Those are the roasted sesame seeds. Or they're whole. The sesame seeds are whole, and they're ground into this wonderful tahini nut butter. Now you can get on the market as the years are going by, and the popularity of this food is just, exploding. We have fresh raw almond butter. Those are almonds that are going to be blanched and ground up not at a high heat, so they retain all of their enzymes. And so these are just a couple of companies I love to use. This particular company, Rejuvenative Foods, it's 100% organic, and they have a very airtight seal, and all of their products, you'll find them in the refrigerated section of your health food store. So now let's learn about soaking the nuts and sprouting them and blanching them. First of all, we have pecans. Now you can see here the pecans are dry. And then on these pecans have been soaking for quite some time. You can see that the water is a lot dirtier, or darker, I might say. And you'll notice that when these nuts are soaked, that all of this, like these walnuts, look at these. These walnuts are really pretty dark most of the time, and those are the enzyme inhibitors I was telling you about earlier. Now look at these. Once when we rinse these off, you're going to see how much lighter they are, and they almost get white. They get much, much lighter. And you can see the water here in the almonds. The almonds are kind of like wrinkled up. Those enzyme inhibitors are just protecting them. We could sit them out here probably for days and days and days, and they would just stay like this, maybe even a year. Whereas, fruit would never have that happen. But once we do this to them, we soak them, and they start to get all puffed up with the water and all hydrated. Then when we blanch them and take the seeds off, then they're going to start to oxidize, and they're going to shrivel up and die. So we're going to keep them alive. That's the whole idea of this. Now I also have these sesame seeds. I'm sorry, they're not sesame seeds, they're sunflower seeds. And I really wanted to demo them to you. But I want to tell you what happened. You can see in these sesame seeds, I'm going to put the jar up here, and I'm going to put the bowl right here so you can see them. They actually got these little pink things on them, and they have very long tails, and all the skins came off. Sunflower seeds they're just so hardy. They grow so fast, and you can soak these for about 5 hours, and they're really ready to eat. If you sprout them and they get too long, which they do very easily and very fast, they're really, kind of bitter. They lose their sweetness, and all of these nuts have a lot of sweetness to them. So that's what happens with sunflower seeds, and even though we soaked these and stored them in the refrigerator, they still grew. So it's important for you to realize, and this is why I wanted to show you this, is that even if the nuts are stored in the refrigerator, they will continue to grow, some more than others. And this really just happened overnight. And you can see these even pink things are starting to change color and have a discoloration. And then all these little teeny shells are floating to the top. And usually when your sunflower seeds have been soaked and you're going to be wanting to rinse them, you're going to let the water settle to the bottom. Or let the water will rise high, the seeds will settle to the bottom, and you'll see that all these shells will float to the top, and you'll want to rinse those off. And I'm sorry I really can't show you more, but you can see that they grow very quickly. But they're really the same as we did the lentils and the chickpeas. So I'm going to take these over to the sink and show you how to rinse them. And basically, you're not going to sprout these because they don't really sprout. Walnuts are not going to sprout. Neither are your pecans. So once we rinse them, we're just going to want to store them in water like we did these seeds, and we're going to want to cover them and rinse them once a day. And then you're going to take them out and you'll have these wonderful soaked, very hearty tasting walnuts. And trust me, they taste good too. It's a very different taste than when you roast them. And same with the almonds. And I have two other seeds I want to show you here, or just one actually, the flax seeds. These are golden flax. And when I lift these up, they're very, very gooey. And that's what happens with flax. Flaxseed, when they're soaked, get very gooey like this. And it's going to take quite a bit of rinsing to get them where we want. And it's also very good to use. Sometimes they'll use it as an egg substitute in baking. But we're going to actually use it in one of our recipes that you'll see in our next segment. But I wanted to show you that. And then here are the almonds already blanched. And we've got some water back here on the pan, and it's cooking up, so where we're going to blanch these. But this is how they look. They actually all fell apart. Sometimes they don't. They all stick together, but these are the blanched almonds. And that means not only have we soaked them and rinsed them, but then we've taken that outer shell off. And you'll see when I take them off how thick they are and why it's so much easier to digest them without this heavy seed and coating on it. All right, so we're going to go back to the sink. I'm going to take both of these and rinse them. Well, I can hear that water starting to bubble. Now I want you to see all of this brown water that comes off of these as I pour it into the colander, or into the strainer. See how dark that water is? And these are the almonds. And they've soaked really well. And all of this, you know, you want to use your hands a lot when you're playing with raw food. If you want to, you can wear gloves. But it's really important that you really wash your hands really well before you get started. Because I love to put my hands in the seeds and make sure they all get rinsed really well. Now I believe that the water is already boiling, and it is. I'm going to turn the heat down here a bit, because I actually could just turn it off. All we're going to want to do is put these into boiling water for about 1 minute. And while those are boiling for about 1 minute or less, I'm going to go ahead and rinse the walnuts. And you can see here, look at this water. Now, can you imagine if you hadn't rinsed these off, you would be eating all of those enzyme inhibitors. And that's the whole idea behind raw food, is to take every kind of action at all possible to help your body digest and to assimilate these living foods. Because nuts and seeds are often sometimes hard for people to digest. And we can just set these in a bowl and they can strain. I usually like to sit them out for a little while, and I'll go ahead and chop them and put them on a salad, maybe on top of some good yogurt with some raisins. And okay, I think these have been about a minute. And I'm going to take these out and pour them like that. It's a good idea, very good idea, to have everything ready. I can't tell you how many times I have actually done the seeds, cooked them, and then go, oh my gosh, I don't have my strainer out yet. And then they sit too long. So it's important that you have everything in its place when you get started. They call that in cooking school mise en place, and it means everything in its place. And I tell you, it will change your life. And especially with raw food, you want to get all your ingredients out, all your equipment out, and it makes it much, much easier. Now look at the steam is just coming off of these. And even though we put them in hot boiling water, they haven't been in there long enough to destroy the enzyme action of the seeds. So you just take your hands on it like this, and you barely press it, and off comes the skin. And I'm going to do a couple of these to show you, and I'm going to start to make a little pile right here of all of these shells that come off. And you'll see what I mean at how thick they are. And look at these nice, now these are kind of hot. But I'll tell you what, your kids will love doing these. Sometimes if I'm watching something on television that really interests me, or listening to some great music, or maybe even talking on the phone, I can just go ahead and shell these while I'm doing something else. Or we have the kids do them, and they have a lot of fun because you just really, I mean, watch this one, it's going to pop. They just pop right out of the shells. It's so easy. And you can let them cool off a little bit first. I think that we pretty much covered it for this segment on seeds or nuts. And, oh, I wanted to say one more thing about pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds, they should be soaked too, and they're much like the walnut. You just soak them and then eat them right away after you soak them. But I often eat them raw too, and we're going to grind them for some pumpkin seed powders. Now for juicing. When you juice your vegetables, we're just going to juice some carrots today to show you how to just put them through the juicer, because the reason we chose carrots is because everybody loves carrot juice, or most people love carrot juice. It's very, very sweet. And we're going to use the carrot pulp in a salad dressing that we're going to make, and we're also going to dehydrate it in some cookies. So we're just going to juice the carrots. But I wanted to show you lots of these other foods and how the carrots look when we juice them. These have been washed very good. They may not look beautiful, not like you'd get in a restaurant or something, but the skin, again, is very important. It has a lot of antioxidants and phytochemicals that are just essential for our cell growth and health and vitality. And so we want to keep the vitality of the food in its integrity. So we make sure that we wash them really good, but we don't cut off all these ends because that's another area where it does have some essential nutrients. I just wanted to point out that broccoli can be juiced, many of your fruits, cabbage, cauliflower, and even sprouts. Sprouts are juiced quite a bit. And this particular juicer has the ability, because there's a screen down here on the bottom, and you'll notice that when we start to juice, the juice will come out here of the bottom where my hand is right here, and the pulp is going to land right into this bowl. And I'll go ahead and move these right over here so you can see this really well. And then we're going to go ahead and put this pulp in a container, and we're going to save it to make something else, as you'll see later. Now, the versatility of this particular juicer is that we could put another plate. There's a screen on here now, but we could put another plate on it, which we're going to do in another segment. And so when the food is put into the top, it's actually going to it's actually going to go on. When we put the food into the top, let's see, there we go. When we put the food into the top, it's going to come out in its entirety on this end. So let's say we took some frozen bananas, which we're going to do later, and it's actually going to come out of here like a sorbet, because we're not going to take the food apart. The carrot, as we put it in, is actually going to be broken apart. The juice is going to fall down here, and the pulp is going to come out here, so it's going to be separated. So this has a great versatility. You can put coconut meat in here and make coconut cream. You can put nuts in here and make nut butters. It has so much versatility, and that's why I love this juicer. Sometimes, though, if I'm making a lot of juices and I'm using celery and cucumber and I'm just really going to town and wanting to make a lot, I'll use a different juicer. I often use the Jack LaLanne juicer. I like that one a lot because it has a big hole in the top. And as you can see on this juicer, this comes apart like this. This has a smaller hole, so you have to cut all the food or all the fruit that's put in. For the carrots, we don't have to, and that's why we're going to demo these. So I'm going to turn this on and just show you basically how it works. Just stick the carrot in like that. And then this plunger, you can see that juice coming out down there in the bottom? And once they're cleaned, again, you want to have everything in its place. Whoops. Oh, I tried to do too much at once. Some wonderful combinations. Celery and apple, cucumber, celery, apple. Carrot is great in everything, but if you're sugar sensitive, a big glass of carrot juice is a lot of sugar. One of my favorites is to use a couple of carrots, a couple of beets, maybe just one beet, a juice of a whole lemon, and you can put the lemon right through the whole juicer, and with its skin on and everything. Maybe a little piece of ginger, an apple, some celery, some cucumber. If you use a lot of greens too, like spinach greens and broccoli, sometimes the juice will taste kind of flat. And so if you add a lemon, it really makes a big difference. And maybe just a couple of carrots to sweeten it up. And then a very small piece of ginger. I know some friends that can eat a huge piece of ginger, but boy, it's just too much for me. I just like a little bit. So I'm just going to juice one more and then show you. Another thing about this juicer is that it doesn't go real fast. I mean, this is pretty fast when you consider you're getting a whole fresh juice. But it kind of takes its time. It's a very heavy juicer. It's got a very good motor, and it's very safe for kids to use. And lately I've been talking about kids, but we're talking about kids like over 10, unless you supervise them. But they have fun juicing, especially making sorbets. So you can see this pulp. It's very warm. And we're gonna make a salad dressing in one of the next segments, and it's going to be made with the carrot juice, some of the carrot juice, and the pulp to thicken it. And it's so good. I love the salad dressing. And then you can see the juice. We're going to pour this into this pitcher. You can keep your juice in your fridge for about 3 days, I think, max. I like my juice fresh, but sometimes you just don't want to get out the juicer and juice constantly. I'll tell you one thing too about juicing and raw foods. If your equipment's out, you're going to use it a lot faster. If you have it put away, you're just not going to do it as much. And this juicing is probably one of the most powerful things you can do for your health, because how often can you get that many vegetables into your body, all at once and enjoy just a refreshing drink. So there's some carrot juice, and I'm just going to continue making some more. And then we're going to do a segment here very soon where we're going to use the food processor, and we're going to make some hummus, and we're going to have some chopped vegetables, and we're going to have a little bit of a feast. A big feast. I'm going to take you through a little bit more of a journey through with seeds and nuts and a little bit more equipment. I'm going to introduce to you sesame seeds. These are hulled sesame seeds. And remember I mentioned earlier that some of the sesame seeds already have the hulls on them. I'm sorry, these are unhulled. These are hulled. You know, we've been going back and forth on this set ever since we've been starting this. Are they hulled or unhulled? And I've often gone into stores and said, "Do you have hulled sesame seeds?" And they think I'm saying whole sesame seeds. So the difference is, and I will show you in another segment what the unhulled sesame seeds look like. They're brown, like you've seen in sushi restaurants. They're kind of crunchy, and they're brown because they have the hull on the outside. And we're actually going to make some sesame milk later, and you'll see that we're going to use hulled sesame seeds in that. But these, I mean unhulled, these are hulled sesame seeds, which means the hulls have been taken off. Okay, so we're going to take the hulled sesame seeds and we're going to grind them in a coffee grinder. Now, coffee grinders are pretty sensitive and they work great for coffee, but as you know, even coffee beans have oil in them, and so do our seeds. So sometimes coffee grinders, I think it's really good to have a couple of them if you're going to grind a lot of nuts and seeds, because it's great to have one for coffee so you don't have to clean it all the time, and one for your seeds. So we're just going to put about half of them in there, or fill it to about halfway. You simply put the lid on and grind it up. I can show you here. And it just grinds up really nice and soft, like a soft powder. And it kind of looks like snow, creamy colored snow. But the point is that you get now a nice soft powder that you can sprinkle on vegetables, and we're going to sprinkle it on a dish we're going to make here with the grater. Now, if we were to keep grinding this and we had great, huge, heavy equipment, we would make tahini, and that's how tahini's made. Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to clean the grinder because just for the essence of time with all of us, I wanted to show you these two different pumpkin seeds. These are pepitas. They're green. These are what you'll find around in most of the stores in the U.S., and these are from Austria. These are Austrian-grown, pure green pumpkin seeds. And later on, we're going to show a wonderful roasted pumpkin seed oil made out of these seeds. But we're going to grind, I'm going to grind these, the pumpkin seeds, and just show you how to make a nice powder that's wonderful to sprinkle on salads. Again, just a quick spin. And then you have this great green powder. Now you might think, oh, what's the use of doing this? Well, you know, when a lot of us are on the run a lot and we're wanting to get a little bit more nuts and seeds in our lives because we know how many antioxidants that we have in them. Pumpkin seeds have great fat, some essential fatty acids, and this is a great, easy way to really enhance a salad. I'm going to tell you these things are delicious, absolutely delicious. And I'm going to put them up here, and you can see this nice green color. And then the white sesame seeds, they're all, and these, when you put them on a salad and then you put on a dressing, they all kind of clump together and they make the salad dressing very rich. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the grater and we're going to make a salad. I love to have a candle burning when I'm in the kitchen. Although tonight we would probably love a little bit more of a breeze because it's really warm here in Maui. But it's beautiful and we're really happy about it. A grater. You know, even if you're not a real live foodist or a raw foodist that eats, you know, raw food all the time, you're going to love using a grater a lot more than maybe you do already. You can grate so many things and make some great salads, and we're going to be making some as we go. But I'm going to make you one of my favorites, which is carrot. not carrot, beet. We're going to use a beet and an apple. And a beet is another food that is not eaten as much as we might like to, especially if we're feeding kids. A lot of them don't like beets, but I'll tell you, when they're raw and they're grated like this, they're yummy. Now I want to show you, this is the grater of all graters. It has, I like to use these little holes right here quite a lot, because when you grate something like a carrot or a beet on these little teeny holes, you actually get a very juicy substance. Whereas if you were to take this big one, these chips, you're going to get chips, which are still difficult to chew. So if you grate them on the small one, you get a very, very juicy piece of a vegetable. When you're grating, you want to have something to hold on to, especially when you're holding food like this. So I usually just cut the end off, clean the beet, of course, really well. You don't need to peel them. And I usually even like to leave the end on about this long, because then I have something really to hold on to. So you just start grating, and pardon the noise here. Now I'm going to show you what we already have going here. And you can see that this beet is really tiny, which makes it a lot easier to chew. And it's actually good if the beet oxidizes a little bit, if it has a little air come into it, because sometimes they can be quite strong. So sometimes I like to grate my beet and let it sit out for 10-15 minutes before I serve it or eat it. And sometimes I even grate it and put it in a dish and put it in the fridge, and then I have it all grated for later. So we're going to grate the rest of this beet. Okay, so that was a workout. Now when you're finished grating, don't take it too close, because it can be dangerous and you can hurt your fingers. So just save this piece. I throw them in a baggie, lots of little extra pieces, the bottoms of broccoli and tops to these, and you can juice them because they're still a really good piece of food. I want to tell you something about using knives too. You really don't want to ever use your knives to pick up your food like this, because that's how you will start to wear out your knife, because it's not made for cutting boards, it's made for food. So it's really good to use the back of your knife to scrape your food into anything off the cutting board. Now we don't need to clean the cutting board, because our next dish is going to go right in here with the beet, and that's an apple. So when you start with any of your food, which many of you probably know, but I might as well go into it a little bit, you always want to create a flat surface when you start your cutting, particularly with a round piece of food like this. So I've already cut off the top, which creates a flat surface for me. So all I have to do is turn it upside down like this, and on my flat surface, and I can go ahead and cut that in half. And then we'll core it, and we'll grate it. And now, the reason that I'm not cutting this more, like we often do when we take the core out of an apple and cut it into pieces and then cut the core off, is I like to have something to hold in my hand that's nice and big when I'm grating. So, and we don't need to peel the apple, although you certainly can if you want to. But the peelings have a lot of antioxidants in them, that's really, you know, when you look at all the different colors of food, you have the yellow for many of your squashes, and oranges for your carrots and your oranges, and apples you've got these red. All of these colors mean different nutrients, and that's why it's so important to get a variety of colors into your life, whether you're juicing or eating whole foods or whole vegetables. And most of us don't eat enough vegetables because they're simply kind of, we don't know what to do with them, or they're hard to chew, and we don't maybe get a variety because we'll have our favorites. But that's why I like to leave the skins on, because I think the skins are really taste good, and I think they're probably really good for me. Now you notice that many times when you grate an apple, you would probably use that bigger slate, but here we're going to use the small one, which really almost makes a whole applesauce. Now it's down to the skin. I'm going to toss that. Now look at this nice juicy apple. Look how juicy that is. There is so much juice here on the board that it's almost like, you know, applesauce, like I said. I'm going to go ahead and put it right in here. Now this particular dish, I love to use these Washington apples. They are so sweet and so tasty. And when you have something like a beet, you're going to want something that's nice and sweet. And I'm going to go ahead and, I got to core this one. And sometimes if my apples are small and I have a really big beet, I will actually use 2 apples because I like it really sweet. And if you're feeding it to your kids, you might want them to have 2 apples because they might not like the idea of eating raw beets. But you'd be surprised how many really like them. Now you notice too, while I'm grating this, I want to tell you a little bit about this bottle of wine sitting next to me. Wine's raw, right? It hasn't been cooked. It's actually been fermented for a very long time and very carefully. But what's important about wine to know is that this particular wine has organically grown grapes. And there's a difference between organic wine and organically grown grapes wine. And the difference is that organic wine may not be from organically grown grapes. In the labeling laws with the USDA, organic wine means that it doesn't have any sulfites in it. But all wine has sulfites in it, even in its natural process of fermentation. So if you get a label that says made with organically grown grapes, then it's made with organically grown grapes, but it has a very, very small amount of sulfites in it, which are quite natural. Okay, you can see this beautiful applesauce here. We're going to just put this right into the dish. I'm going to take a quick wipe of my hands. I'll tell you something too. If you're working with beets, look what happens with your hands. So you want to wash them really good afterwards because they kind of stain. I once knew a friend of mine, she used to eat a lot of beets, and I'm going to move this over to the side. She had a lot of beets and carrot juice all the time, and she actually really had a very pink tone and a yellow tone to her skin. I'll put this right up here. Now, I know this might seem kind of messy, and the truth is, it is sort of, but it's pure food. It's straight from the earth and absolutely delicious. This is one of my favorite things to eat for breakfast. It's also one of my favorite things to have for an afternoon snack when you want something kind of sweet and filling, but you don't want a big meal. And it's very, very fulfilling. And you just mix that together. And sometimes I can eat this whole thing in one sitting, but most of the time, about a half is kind of good. So you just put that together, make sure you get all that juice. Now with this grating, you have all the fiber, you have all the juice from the vegetable, and you have that wonderful texture. I'm going to take these sesame seeds that were ground in the coffee grinder, and we're just going to sprinkle these over lavishly. And then, remember those walnuts. I'm going to grab this other cutting board here that's nice and clean. And we have these walnuts, remember, that we rinsed off and soaked. And we're just going to take these and just chop them slightly. I like them kind of crunchy on this, but this is a wonderful combination. And we're just going to take these walnuts and sprinkle them on top. Now you can also set these in small little dishes and serve them in little serving sizes like that, and they're wonderful for any afternoon snack, maybe an appetizer before a meal, or maybe your salad or your breakfast, however you'd like.
Normally I don't enjoy beets that much, but this is actually pretty tasty.
You like it?
Yeah.
All right, good. How about you, Paul?
Normally I love beets, and this time I also love beets. But they're sweet beets.
Okay, Olivia.
Good.
Definitely the apple.
Olivia. Yeah, it makes it sweet, huh?
You give it all.
Now, Olivia, what did you think it tastes like?
The earth.
She could taste the dirty taste, the dirt. And, it's like when you do a lot of wine tasting, you learn to taste the soil. That's everything about wine. You get to taste a region. And when there's idiosyncrasies from winemakers, the essence of it and the originality of it is that you're tasting a region. And every region has different soil. And that's the same way it is with our foods. Most of us aren't eating really from the soil and eating foods that are grown, like particularly this should taste. She's going to be a great wine connoisseur because she can taste the taste of the earth from the beet because it grew in the earth and it came straight out and we grated it. We didn't cook it. So right, you have a great palate. Welcome back and aloha. I know we've been giving you lots of information, but I'm really trying to take you through these very basic steps of how we soak our nuts and seeds and how we can start using them to blend.
So I really want to acknowledge that you're really paying attention to this and wanting to incorporate some whole foods into your diet. I think it's awesome. And if we'll just move along and we'll just get more and more tasty and have more and more fun as we go. So right now, these are whole sesame seeds, and we're going to make a sesame seed milk. Then we're going to make an almond milk, and out of those same almonds, we're going to make an almond soup and an almond cheese. That's how versatile almonds are. But right now, I'm just going to go ahead and pour these sesame seeds. They're whole, and as I pour them in, I want you to see what they look like. I'm going to put a few here in my hand and show you these. Now, these have the holes on them. Remember, in our last segment, we had these sesame seeds that had the holes off. So they were called whole sesame seeds. But these have the holes on them. And so this is what we're going to make our sesame milk out of. And all you do is you soak these sesame seeds for only about 5 hours. I soak everything overnight. And then I covered them in some water and I stored them in the fridge. We're going to take 2 cups of water. And I'm going to go ahead and pour this in this dish now because it's going to be a whole lot easier to get these tiny little seeds out of here. And just shake it around, and we're going to put it here in the Vitamixer. Now, I like to use about 1 cup of seeds with about 2 or 3 cups of water. And I think we have about 1.5 cups seeds here. It doesn't have to be exactly measured. If you make your milk a little bit rich, you can always add some spring water to it afterwards. So I'm going to explain to you, too, a little bit about this Vitamixer. These are the most awesome machines. They have 2 different speeds, high and low, and off and on. You've got off and on here, and we have high and low here. We're going to start out with low, and then this particular dial can take the machine to a very low, whether it's on high or low, and it just takes it up. This is a 2-horsepower machine, and you don't have to be afraid of letting it go very, very fast because it will just grind and chop so many things. It's one of the most versatile things. You can make juice out of whole vegetables, smoothies out of whole vegetables. It can make frozen sorbets, and it just goes on and on. But right now, we're just going to make a seed milk. So we've got our water in here, and I'm going to turn the machine on, starting at a low speed. You can hear that. And then we're just going to let it escalate up as I turn the dial. And see how that goes way down really low? Isn't that nice? So there we go. Now it's just a matter of straining it. There's a couple ways to get the lids off. These are such a nice tight seal. You can stick a spoon right under it, under the spout, and pop it off that way, or you just squeeze it with your hands. Now what we're going to do with the sesame seeds, and you don't have to do this with all milks, as you'll see in the almond milk, but in this particular milk, the holes are not the healthiest to have in your body. Because remember when we talked about enzyme inhibitors and why we blanch the almonds, we actually took that outer shell off. Now this is pretty thick. I could probably have used a little more water. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to pour this back in. And I'm going to take this and just kind of spoon it down here a little bit. I probably had, at least 1.5 cups seeds in here. I've got a towel down here. Dry my hands. And I'm going to put a little bit more water in his. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because this would have worked fine, but it would have been very thick for the milk to go through. And when we're making a seed cheese, that's exactly what we want. But we're not making a cheese now. We're making milk. So I'm going to pour a little bit more water in here, and you'll see the difference of how much easier it will work. And you know something? You can find recipes for this, and we have them on our website too, and in my Essential Cuisine cookbook. But something about recipes. They're a guideline. I can't even follow my own. I'm changing them all the time. I'll go, I think I'll try this. And so, don't be afraid to experiment. So we're going to turn the machine on, turn it up. And I don't need to mix it much now. There we go. Turn it off. Squeeze the lid. Now you'll see how much easier this is going to pour in this time. Pour through. Sesame milk. I want to tell you, it's one of my favorite milks. I have it in my fridge as much as I can. It's a little bit of time to do it, but you know, you're not buying a milk like in the store in those aseptic packs. Those things are all pasteurized and boiled, and even though they're a good food source, when you don't have time to make your own, can you imagine just having fresh sesame milk? This is so loaded with calcium and other great nutrients. Besides that, it's alkaline and it's fabulous on your tummy. If you have any kind of acid indigestion or any problems with digestion, I love the sesame milk. It's great on cereal, and I love the flavor. I really do. Now you can see I'm just stirring this. I just keep stirring it, and the more I kind of stir it and press on the strainer. I like to use this particular kind of strainer. And when you get strainers, make sure that you get good, sturdy equipment. Because if you're using a strainer that's flimsy and you're pressing on it like I am here with the spoon, I'm just pressing down, and look at how much more milk I get out of here. Isn't that great? And sometimes it's kind of difficult to press it, and I don't want to keep ruining my strainer, because if I do this several times, I'll start to bend the screen. So actually what I do is I just take a nice big handful of this. And you know what? I'm one of these people that loves getting my hands in the food. I scrape it over to the side. I take a big squeeze like this, and I just squeeze it right out of my hands. And we're going to be doing that with some other foods too later on. And I go ahead and discard this pulp. This pulp is not good for anything. Remember when we made the carrot juice and we're going to use the carrot pulp? Well, that's carrot fiber, and carrot fiber is great for you, and so are many of your fruits. But this particular pulp, you don't want to eat this. This is like the almond shells. This is just shells that were there to protect the seed and keep it for its longevity and its ability to keep the food safe and not go rancid. When you have these seeds, these have precious oils in them. Many of you are familiar with sesame oil. Imagine what you're getting in this milk. You are getting every single, not just the oil, but every single other element that this luscious seed has to offer. And I would say that these last, I like to do, I'd say like 5 days at the most. I like everything fresh, so I try to, drink it in by like 4 days or so. Now look at this beautiful milk. You can just pour it in a container, put a lid on it like we did many of the other containers, and store it in your refrigerator, and you have this beautiful milk. Wasn't that easy? A little messy, but easy. We're now going to work with some almonds. Remember how we soaked them and then we blanched them? Well, here we've got 4 cups of nicely blanched almonds. Now, if we wanted to, we could make a milk just like we just did with the sesame milk. You could do the same thing with sunflower seeds and make sunflower milk. There's a lot of different variations you can make, and many of your seeds can be made into the same milk we just made with the sesame milk. What a lot of people like to do is add a little sweetener too. You might want a little bit of maple syrup, a little bit of raw honey. I personally am a honey fanatic, so I love raw honey, particularly if I can get it from the local region where I happen to be. In the islands here, we have some great honey. And maybe a little stevia if you're sugar sensitive. And stevia is a natural herb that's a sweetener that we're going to be using in some of the other segments. But for now, instead of making another seed milk, because you already know the basics of it, you just blend it with the water and you strain out the pulp. We're going to blend these almonds, and we're going to keep the pulp because we're going to make an almond soup base, and then we're going to make some almond seed cheese. And we could be making the same seed cheese or the same soup base with another nut, like it could be, or another seed. We could be using sunflower seeds. We could be using sunflower seed cheese. But I'll show you these variations as we go along. But for now, we're just going to do the basic soup, and then we'll move on to the seed cheese. So I'm going to take 4 cups of the almonds, and I'm going to put them here in the Vitamixer. This is really so simple. I know that it might, seem like it takes a lot, because we really did do a whole lot more before we came to this portion of it. We already soaked them and we blanched them. But you'll learn as you move along to learn these things. You just learn to maybe take one recipe at a time and just start to incorporate it into your life. Like sometimes before I go to bed at night, I just kind of think, oh, I'm in the mood for some almond milk or an almond soup base, and I'll just like pour a bowl of almonds, stick them on the sink, pour some water on them, and go to bed. And then the next morning or day when I have time to blanch them, then I blanch them. Then I might store them and make the soup later. Or you can certainly make the soup right after you blanch the almonds and soak them. But you don't have to do it like all at once, but you do have to plan ahead. So we're going to put the 4 cups of almonds, so that is going to call for 4 cups of water. And the reason this is a little bit thicker is because we're wanting a soup base and we want a seed cheese. So we want it to be heartier, and we're going to keep all the pulp of the nut. Now, remember, we have already really taken the skin off of the almonds, so we don't have to go through the same process that we did with the sesame milk and pour it through and grab that pulp out, because this has all been done. So this is purely good food. So we're going to blend it. And I wanted to show you the tamper that comes with the Vitamix. It actually will go down and will not hit the blade, and it stops right here at the top so that you can always kind of work your food if you're using whole fruits. You'll see too later. Okay, we're going to turn it on and then turn it up. I think that'll probably be good. You can see here on the tamper and these nice little chunks of almonds. I think I might blend it just a little bit more because we want this really creamy. Make sure that's sturdy. And remember, I turned this up. So sometimes if you turn this thing on high and it's already turned up, you got to make sure you got the top on because you'll have soup flying everywhere. So I like to turn the dial down. I like to turn it on, and then I like to turn it off. All right. Now, while this is freshly mixed, I'm going to go ahead and pour out half of it right now. I'm going to pour out about, there we go. That's about half. Look at that. Was that beautiful? Did you see that? Isn't that just beautiful? Now we're going to add some ingredients here for a soup base. First of all, we're going to take the juice of 2 lemons, and we're going to put that in. Now, you know what? You don't need a Vitamixer for this part. You could easily put it in a bowl and whisk it, because these are just going to blend really nicely. We're going to take a tablespoon of flax oil. Now, even though we're using raw, this is a raw recipe because our nuts are raw. Barlean's is my favorite oil, my favorite flax oil, and I'll tell you why. They're the only company that makes the oil, presses it fresh, and sends it directly to the store or directly to you. It doesn't sit on a distributor shelf somewhere. You put your order in, they press the oil with no heat whatsoever, and it comes straight to you or straight to the store where you buy it. So when you buy it at a store, you know you're getting fresh oil. This particular one is their Essential Woman, and it has some evening oil of primrose in it and a little bit of rosemary and high lignans. And we're going to continue to talk about oils as we move along in these segments. But right now, not to get things too complicated, we want to keep them really simple. If you don't want to use a flax oil, you can use an olive oil. Olive oil is good for everything. Extra virgin olive oil, considered a raw or live food. For this soup, and you can use whatever you want, we're going to put a little bit of cumin in there. Whoop. Did we ever put a little bit of cumin? I put the whole dish in. Okay, we got the container out of the blender when we dropped it in and put the cumin in. So we didn't want to do it over again because, you know what, things like this happen in everybody's kitchen. We took it out, we washed it off, but we already have the cumin in there, so we don't want to put it in there again because we are all looking forward to eating this soup. So, and I want you to do the same. If you ever drop things in there accidentally, you just might make up the coolest recipe that's ever been made up. You never know what might happen in the kitchen, and that's the fun part of creating food. It's really fun to experiment. So let's see, I think we put some lemon in there, and we put some flax oil, and we definitely have cumin. And now we're going to put some garlic, and this garlic has already been all chopped up for us. And you could just put the whole clove because you know how this Vitamixer works. It really will just ground anything. So we've got garlic, and you can put some veggie seasoning in it. You know, just be creative. What we're going to put is here, we're going to put a little bit of tarragon. And I'm going to put just about a teaspoon. I don't often measure with teaspoons. I just use my hands a lot because I love just having my hands in food. It's kind of like playing with, you know, art or clay or something like that. So I'm just going to grind these up a little bit more in my hands and sprinkle them in. Beautiful colors. And I think oh no, we're going to want to put some salt in. And let me talk to you about salt. I have 3 different things of salt out here, and I'm just going to give you a little blurb on salt. And we're going to talk a lot about it because I love this salt. This salt, to me, is like God. I know that's a big stretch, but anyway, I love this salt. Celtic sea salt. When you see something that says Celtic sea salt, it comes from one place, and that's in the French, in the Mediterranean, in France, off the coast of France, and it comes from a company called Celtic sea salt. And they have 3 different kinds of salt. We have the fine, and then they have the large gray crystals, and then the fine gray crystals, and this is flower of the ocean. Fleur de sel, as it's often called. But this particular salt, when there are certain wind conditions on the ocean there, the actual salt floats to the top, and it's hand harvested off the top of the ocean, and you are getting the flower of the ocean. It's not a hard crystal. It's not fine. It's in between there somewhere, and it has this consistency that when you put it in your mouth, it doesn't go crunch. It just kind of like bursts. And I love using it as a condiment on foods. I personally don't usually cook with salt at all. I usually salt afterwards because I love the flavor of salt. And I have a friend that told me, never on top of, always in. But my motto is kind of never in, always on top. But with this particular soup, we're going to go ahead and put it in because it's really going to enhance the flavor a lot. And we're going to put about a half a teaspoon in. A lot of raw food, if you go to some raw food restaurants, a lot of people think it's too salty. Yeah, this is a half a teaspoon. And it can be. Sometimes they'll use a lot of tamari and a lot of salt and a lot of, excuse me, a lot of salt, a lot of tamari, maybe a lot of liquid aminos, Bragg's liquid aminos, to flavor things because they might think it needs more of that. I personally don't. There's other ways to flavor things. A little cayenne might be fun in this, depending on who's eating it. You might want to spice it up with maybe a little bit of a hot pepper. Use your imagination. Now we're going to go ahead and put the top back on here, and we're just going to give it one little quick swirl. I'm going to turn it down, turn it on. It's not going to take much. Now remember when I said I was making a soup? This is really a soup base. This particular base, I'm going to go ahead and pour it in here. Look at that. Is that beautiful? We're going to make 3 nice bowls of it. Oops. Are we going to get 3 out of it? I think we're barely going to. Somebody's going to get a big portion. There we go. Now, that, like I said, that's just a soup base. And we're going to garnish it. We've got some chopped, very diced, smally chopped, diced vegetables. Use your imagination. You could do tomatoes on this. But, a lot of people like a little bit of a crunch to something. But we're just going to decorate it with these nicely diced vegetables. And maybe put a little sprig of parsley on each one. Isn't that lovely? Now this soup will blow your mind. I've taught many classes where I've made this soup and people go, just fresh almonds, and they take a bite and literally they go, oh my God, that is so good. And that's the way it is. So enjoy. And now we'll get ready to make the seed cheese. Okay, now if you thought that was cool, we're going to get even better. It's so much fun to play with these. These particular little bags are called seed cheese bags. You can buy them at most health food stores. You can get them online. You can also, if you don't have them, you can use cheesecloth. It's a little more difficult because you're going to have to create a bag and tie a knot at the top if you use cheesecloth, but it does work. And many of you who are already chefs, you know that you use cheesecloth many times to strain things. So this is all you need to do. Now remember, we poured the almond milk, or this thick almond juice milk soup substance. It's just raw almonds and water, and all we really have to do is pour it into this bag. Now if you were using sesame seeds, or not sesame seeds, but sunflower seeds, you would do the same thing. The first time I tasted almond milk, I just thought I had died and gone to heaven. I just could not believe how good it was. Whoops, I'm just losing my grip here. You want to make sure you hold it nice and tight. Now you can see what's going to happen is all of this juice is going to slowly fall out and just strain right through it, and the pulp is what's going to remain in there. And then this cheese will start to form. And it just takes overnight. If you do it in the morning, it'll be ready in the evening. And later on, we're going to use this seed cheese on some fun roll-ups. But for right now, this is all you have to do. Now, as you can imagine, what am I going to do with this thing now that I've been holding it? You can't hold it forever. You're going to have to hang it somewhere. Now, we're going to go hang it over near the kitchen sink, and you've got to hang it with a bowl underneath it because it will continue to drip. One of my favorite things to do is right after I do this, I let it sit for maybe about 5 more minutes, and then I drink this juice right up. And then I let it sit. I don't particularly care for the juice that sits there overnight, but it's good too. It's certainly good. When you get done, you will have the most, we'll show you on camera. We'll show you the seed cheese that this makes, and it is just luscious, like kind of like the consistency of a cottage cheese, but it's not lumpy like cottage cheese, but it's kind of that same thickness. Now, if you wanted to, what you would do when you finished with this, you could add a lot of these chopped vegetables like we did in these soups. You could finely chop them, add some spices, mix them all together and put them in the refrigerator, and then you would have a veggie seed loaf. There's so many variations you can put to flavor this. And you could actually flavor this, instead of making it plain, you could put lots of spices in it. You could make like a southwestern flavor and put some chili in it and some cayenne. You could make an Italian flavored seed cheese, and all those flavors would stay right in here and just go ahead and ferment overnight. So stay tuned, and we will show you this later after it's all ready to eat. Wasn't that easy? Aloha and welcome back. Now we're going to play with the dehydrator, which means we're going to be mixing some things in the food processor. We're going to be making some pizza dough. We've already made some crust. We're going to look at some fruits, and there's a lot of variations you can do with this dehydrator. Remember, we introduced it in the beginning scene? This right here is the dehydrator. It's an Excalibur. What you're seeing right here is all the trays that come out. This is a 9-tray machine. It has a timer up here and a dial to give your temperature. But basically it runs about from 95 degrees to 145 degrees. And what happens is the air circulates around the food at a constant pressure and a constant temperature. When you first put your foods in, however, they're going to be much lower of a degree. Like they're not going to bump up to 120 degrees if that's where you set it right off the bat. But they will slowly cook over time, and that's why they're continued to be living foods. So what we're going to do, I want to show you these trays first of all. Now these trays, we just dehydrated some apples on them, and you can still see we have some little pieces here. There's tons, you can make fruit leathers. You know the ones you get in the store that are all rolled up? You can make fruit leathers, and you can make dehydrated fruits. Bananas we have right here, we literally just slice these thin, and we put them on here. Now we didn't have professional cutters. We had all the kids cut these, and they had such a good time. Then they laid them on the tray, and the air circulated right through this screen, and we made these incredible sweet snacks. They are delicious, and these are apple bananas here on the islands. We did the same thing with the apples, and we cut them all by hand. And some of our teens had a really good time cutting these because they were practicing all their knife skills. Of course, we supervised. But these are all the apples that just laid right here. You can store them once they've been dehydrated to a very dry temperature. Once they have no more moisture in them, then you will just put them in a dish, put a lid on them, and put them in the fridge or put them in an airtight bag and store them, and they'll stay indefinitely for a long period of time. So we also made some crackers. Now these are made out of flax seeds, some carrot pulp, some chopped peppers, some parsley. I threw quite a bit of herbs in them, and we made up these crackers. You can see how they look. We did them pretty thin because we wanted them to dehydrate shorter period of time, and we wanted them to be crunchy, and we're going to serve them later with the hummus. These particular pizza crackers we're going to enjoy later, and this is what I'm going to demo to you right now. We're going to make these pizza crackers. There's so many different variations, and as you venture out into live food, you'll find many different cookbooks and many different recipes. I guarantee you, you will start finding your own. It's so much fun. These are the crackers. We labeled them and put them in an airtight dish, and these will just last forever, so that when you want to go make a sauce like we're going to in a few more segments, then you'll be able to just take these crackers out and they'll be all ready, and you just whip up the sauce, whip up a cream topping, and you'll have instant raw food, live food pizza. All right, here's the deal. I'm giving you kind of a complicated recipe here for these crackers. I mean, it's not really complicated, but it's a little bit to work with your hands. I mean, we all know it's pretty simple to cut these things and put them on a tray. So I'm not going to show you how to do that. But I'm going to show you how to do this because it's a little bit gooier and a little bit more to work with. So if we're going to start out with wheat berries. Remember in the first few segments when we sprouted some seeds, these are the wheat berries, and I think I showed them to you just like I'm showing them to you now. They've got a nice long tail on them. They've been stored in some nice cold water, and we're ready to ground these up and make a live food, raw food pizza crust. Can you even imagine? How awesome is that? I mean, it's really awesome. So we're just going to put those in the food processor. We're going to add some flax seeds that were also soaked. I remember when I was showing you how gooey they were. Well, we've rinsed all these off. They're still pretty gooey. Look at that. It's just really, really gooey. But this is what's really nice about flax seeds. When you use soaked flax seeds in a recipe like this, it binds it because of all of that gooiness. Remember I said that they're good to use as an egg substitute? Well, that's what we like about this recipe, or using these for crackers. Now we're going to put about 1/3 to 1/2 cup of olive oil. I'm going to go ahead and just pour some of this in. I'm going to leave some in case I need a little bit more. Remember, everything is always different. We've got about 2/3 to a cup of carrot pulp. Remember the carrot pulp we saved from the carrot juice? Isn't that a great thing to be able to use? Again, and then we want to put some seasoning in it. And we want to put some garlic in it. Here we go. We've got a whole bunch of garlic. Oh, this is the salt. All right, I'm going to take Italian seasonings. This is from Whole Spice. They make their seasonings very fresh. Wonderful company. Look how finely ground that is. Really a beautiful, very, very fresh Italian seasoning. We're going to add 5 cloves of garlic. And you know what? We didn't need to dice all of these, but I just wanted to show them to you all diced. They look so beautiful. And now we're going to blend this. And this is going to be our pizza dough. We could just turn it on too, or you could pulse it. And it's just going to continue to just churn and churn like that. You see that really well? I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to it. You know, you can never have too much olive oil. Now you see that just gave it enough of a little bit of more of a liquid. That's making it more of a dough. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And I'm going to take a spoon here and just kind of mix it up a little bit. I think it would eventually mix on its own. There is a spatula too. You can also use that. Oh, this is nice. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Now, I don't think we put any salt in this. And I think that would be really good. You can also use tamari. I'm going to take a little bit of salt here. Oh, we've got some poured right here. There's a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we'll put this back on and we'll just let it mix a little bit more, and then I'll show you how to shape it. There we go. You see that? Look at that great pizza dough. Those are all those live wheat berries. What a great, great food source. Now I'm going to introduce to you another, let me get this blade out here, because we're just going to use this. Instead of putting this into another bowl, why dirty another bowl if we don't have to? Put that right down here, and I'll put it in the bowl I have going here. Wipe my hands off. These are these Teflex trays, sheets. Kind of like parchment paper, but for dehydrators. They're made for dehydrators. If you don't have these, and let's say you're making this pizza dough in your oven, you could easily put it on a cookie sheet and then put a piece of parchment paper underneath it. That works really well. I've done that many times and it works just fine. Basically, the reason you want to use these can be washed and reused. You don't have to throw away parchment paper. But you see, on this particular tray, we couldn't put this dough. It would all stick to the tray. Remember how the apples were kind of stuck when I first started here? Because they'll stick to it, and they'll easily come off. But these are what you want to do in the beginning. And what we're going to do is take about, I like to take like 1 spoonful here, and now we get to get our hands in it, and that's the fun part. Just roll this out and press it down. Now, if you have a hard time and it's not pressing well with your hands, it gets a little sticky, you can use a little bit of orange juice or a little bit of olive oil, a little bit more. I can just dip right into this bowl and just pat it like that, and then it won't be so sticky. What you want to do, what's really important, is to do them even. I want to make sure you can see these here too. Let me move these over just a little bit. And make them anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch at the most thick. I've done them both. You can see these aren't very thick. These were just really about 1/4, and I was kind of surprised these came out as thin as they did. I'm going to make these just a little bit thicker. So what we do, and you want to get the kids involved or anyone to help you, it's kind of fun. You can open up one of those great organic bottles of wine and enjoy making your pizza crust, because these are going to dehydrate for several hours on this Teflex sheet. And then when they get pretty dry, you'll be able to take them off like this, easily peel them off, and put them on this sheet. You can turn them over or you can leave them straight up, because remember what I said, the air circulates through the entire dehydrator all at the same time. So it's not a matter of turning things over or having to do that, because it's going to cook on both sides. But it's not going to cook on both sides if it's like this. But this will just cook it enough to where it'll hold itself together, it'll hold its integrity of its shape, and then you can just turn it over or just take it off the sheet and put it on the wire mesh tray and let it continue. I think it's about 8 hours on one side like this, and then take the tray off, and it's about another 6 hours. That's all going to depend on how thick you get it. Now here in Hawaii, I made a bunch of them the very first time, and then I went and put them out on the table just like I have here, and within several hours they were all gooey again. They had all that moisture because it's so moist in the air here. So you want to make sure that you put them in an airtight container and that they don't have any moisture left in them. And they'll last for a very long time. Weeks and weeks they'll last in your refrigerator if you keep them in an airtight container. And they're great to make ahead of time, because you know this is pizza, but they could be crackers for anything. And you know what? You can make them whatever shape you want. You don't have to stick with this round piece. I just find them the easiest to work with. And one time I did make them really thick. I think I made them like 1/2 inch thick. Oh, they were great. I loved them. And they're so hardy. They're great to carry in your car with you. They're great to put in your kids' lunches, because they're getting such a great food source. If their kids are eating bread, most of it's been processed. It's not, you know, we do have a lot of wonderful breads today that are made with whole grains, and some of them made with sprouted. But these you made, and they are very, very tasty and unique. And you can even make them sweet. Imagine if we were to make this and maybe put some dates in it. Maybe you would still use some carrot pulp. You could put chopped apples in it, and instead of going with the garlic flavor and the Italian seasoning, you could go with a kind of a sweet cracker or like a cookie. So there's so many different variations in there, and you can use a lot of your pulp from when you do your juicing. I'm going to put a little bit more on this one. And get very creative in having great food source all the time. So have fun with it.